sounds like a very niche segment and a set of knowledge as well to have. How did you get into this, and how long did it take for you to understand the nuances of this industry and the?
Well,
Yeah.
well, very honestly, I just landed up here, right? It's not it's very very interesting because uh, and it's interesting because it kind of ties up to a couple of the things you guys had discussed before. By the way, just one thing on a side note, I must admit that your onboarding form, etc., and all were very, very well thought out by you guys. So I think great job on that. I think it kind of makes you take a step back and question yourself as well a little bit as
Yeah.
to what you're doing. So that's cool. So yeah, so in fact, it's interesting because the journey of Sport Radar actually happened to me while I was building a market entry strategy with somebody.
Oh, okay.
So what I was doing right before Sport Radar, I was running a small boutique consulting venture with a friend of mine, and
Okay.
as a key part of that venture was growth, right? And it's fun. It's interesting because we were doing growth using three different arms, right? So and it's very interesting to hear what you guys are doing from an education standpoint. We were a bit more commercial savvy. We were doing growth from a startup function by three different venues. So it was growth via building your own team because you obviously grow. So that's growth via funding. So we called it fundraising
Hmm.
because we did fundraising to allow you to build a better team.
Right.
And that was one of the growth models. The other was obviously growth via sales, right? So that's the best way to grow. And then growth via partnerships and business strategic partnerships and alliances. So these
Okay.
were all three what we were doing. So along this path, and obviously my even before that, for the like I think now the last 7 years I've been in the sports industry, right?
Hmm.
So generally combining sports technology and finance or commerce were my sort of things which I kind of started batting my head against since about 6 years now. So always kind of keep experimenting new and new things. It could be as different as running my own. In fact, I've started my own esports team actually in Bangalore. I was the first person to start an internationally funded Counter Strike team in India
Oh.
with a company called Optic Gaming. So it was a bunch of I think, and again I always keep telling this to people, saying it's a bunch of doing things what you don't just keep doing things till you know that you don't want to do that, right? And then you somehow land up on the thing you want to do. So kind of from me, that's always been trial by error, trial and error. But with Sport Radar, it was very interesting because one of my accomplices, who was an export radar guy, connected me to their head of emerging markets to say, hey, they are looking to enter India. Can you help them with a consulting piece? I said, sure, happy to. He's like, listen, they are obviously a very big company, so feel free to put a big fat check on your services. However, if you are looking for a bigger story here, just think about it. So I was like, fine. So the project started with me actually building a market entry document for these guys. At the end of the project, the guy who received my presentation actually came back to me about a month later saying, hey, the management really likes what you've presented. Do you have anybody in mind who could actually execute this strategy? Correct. And I was like, yeah, I mean, again, and then he was very straightforward. He's like, would you want to ever execute this? I said, I'm happy to look into it. And this was April 2018. Now I ended up joining them by June, July. And so it's been a 30 months of a lot of learning. I think the biggest advantage has been, as I told you, right? A lot of people look at me or look at Sport Radar India and they're like, oh, how do you know these things? Because you're here. It's 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 actually very very interesting for anyone, for people who are building organizations, to be how relevant even on a global scale they've become through the processes they've built and the way knowledge sharing happens is in pretty much a seamless fashion, right?
Hmm.
So yes, it wasn't easy. It took me a bit of time, but again, it's one of those companies where if you're curious, you will always find the answer because there are so many people who know so much more than you do. There's so much knowledge bank available. So it's just a matter of raising your head, putting your hand up in the air, and saying, "Listen, I don't know this. Can somebody help me?" And the one thing I've always learned is to always be shameless about asking shameful questions.
Yeah.
And I really like it, and I think people who ask stupid questions are the ones who are actually thinking about things, right? So it's and then that's what's it's been. I mean, again, I'm very very early in my Sport Radar journey or in this kind of journey, but I think it's really helped being in a room or in a Zoom call nowadays. It's the new, I guess, marketing stint. But I think it's just the sheer interpersonal ability of being able to go walk up to anybody. It's a very, very flat organization. I can pretty much today write an email after this call to my CEO and say, listen, this is phenomenal. What I did, we should do this. And he will actually take his time and sit back and reply to me. So it's I think it helps a lot by building the kind of organization you build as a company allows people inside it to really grow very quickly in
Yeah,
their own feet if they are obviously wanting to grow.
correct. So